Morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome to your last forecast update for 2024. The detailed forecast update for December 31st, 2024. I've got a lot to get through today. We'll recap on those severe thunderstorms that occurred over in the southeast of Queensland, but let's take a look at what's on the forecast tonight. Also into the northeast of New South Wales, severe thunderstorms on the cards. Heavy rainfall, potentially some heavy falls up into the north of Queensland as well. We'll talk about that on the forecast, and a tropical low lingering offshore from Western Australia. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast, but let's get stuck straight into things. Last night, some really significant rainfall occurred across the southeast of Queensland, with 189mm being the maximum observation outside of Hervey Bay on the northern extremities of the Sunshine Coast. Very heavy rainfall indeed. It was actually a lot heavier than the forecast was suggesting. I didn't expect that much rainfall to come through. Thankfully though, because the rainfall was so intense, by the looks of things, that rainfall that we were expecting early today hasn't really materialised for locations around sort of the Brisbane towards the Maroochydore sort of area. We were expecting a line of showers to develop in pretty much the exact same place that we saw yesterday morning. They did develop earlier on this morning, but we really didn't see them come into fruition in terms of really heavy rainfall, so that was a good thing there, because I was really concerned about the flooding in that sort of situation for a brief moment. Last night though, the forecast played out pretty much exactly how it was expected to. It was just a little bit different in terms of the rainfall for a lot of locations. Thunderstorms blew up pretty early on in the afternoon around Goondiwindi and Roma, and then they blew up pretty big later on into the evening, moved into the southeastern corners of Queensland up into towards the Sunshine Coast, and really started to drop their loads there. Some really significant falls were reported. Kingaroy 140mm, I believe Hervey Bay picked up about 100mm as well. Let me know how much rainfall your locations picked up. I'm especially interested if you live around the Kingaroy area and then up around the Hervey Bay area, because some really heavy falls were reported there. Bundaberg also picked up a couple of drops of rainfall as well. They did miss out on the really heavy stuff, but they still got a couple of drops there. Unfortunately, the remainder of central Queensland all missed out on the rainfall as well, unless you were further inland, where those thunderstorms were pretty persistent throughout the night. Some good storms firing up around the Emerald area throughout the night as well, and as such, the rainfall accumulations there were also quite heavy. Looking forward throughout tonight, there isn't an awful lot on the forecast. Some showers still lingering from the thunderstorms that have happened last night, but you can see those thunderstorms will fire up again along the Sunshine Coast and into the southeastern corner of Queensland pretty early on into the afternoon again, at sort of around 1 or 2 p.m. Those thunderstorms will be pretty quick to go severe if they are going to go severe up in the Sunshine Coast, where they do have a 50-50 chance of being a severe thunderstorm outbreak up there. We'll likely see the thunderstorms go severe, warned for heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and the chance of some medium to large sized hailstones. We'll see some severe thunderstorms as well into the southeast of Queensland. Might look like the scenic rim of the Gold Coast might actually get a couple of thunderstorms as well. You can see thunderstorms dotting the forecast between Warwick and the Gold Coast. For locations such as Boonah and Beaudesert could really see some good thunderstorms out there. And if you were to take a look at the convective forecast models as well for this afternoon and evening, you can see there are some intense plotches of rainfall along the Queensland-New South Wales border, extending into New South Wales, which I'll get to in just a few minutes, but there are still some good thunderstorms here and there. On this sort of forecast, we kind of disregard the green and yellow blobs. We only look at the really powerful red ones and the odd-shaped red ones as well. That's where we're looking at those significant thunderstorms. You can see the chance of them is going to be extending along the Queensland-New South Wales border. They could actually be quite intense at times around Stanthorpe, Texas, and then inland towards Goondiwindi and Boomie. Thunderstorms should kind of ease off as you get around out towards Thallon and Lightning Ridge. They're not expecting too much there. And then into New South Wales, there's a forecast for later on in the video. And then up into the north parts of the Sunshine Coast, you can see some good thunderstorms expected to fire pretty much right out of the gate from about, I guess, sort of 1 or 2 p.m. These thunderstorms here dotting the areas between Hervey Bay down to about Kingaroy along that line. A couple of thunderstorms expected to extend out into the Brisbane metro area, especially into the western suburbs of Brisbane, but they shouldn't be too severe out there. And heavy falls expected around the Crow's Nest, Kingaroy area, and then up towards Hervey Bay and Tiara as well. Some heavy falls possible out there. Just with what these thunderstorms are going to look like, they will be very similar to the ones that we saw early on into the afternoon throughout the course of yesterday. Not so much the massive thunderstorms we saw out into the more central parts of Queensland. That one that fired up right out of the gate around St. George was something that was. I remember looking at that at the radar and thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to have a night across southeast of Queensland. That's exactly what they got. They should be less intense than yesterday's, is kind of the short story here, but still some gnarly thunderstorms are expected here and there to round out 2024. Thankfully though, for the fireworks celebrations across Brisbane, the rainfall does pretty much clear out of Brisbane by midnight, and there isn't much in the way of thunderstorms across the southeast of Queensland. A couple of dying storms around Chinchilla and Goondiwindi, and then maybe we're developing 1 or 2 around Moranbah, Claremont, that sort of area, typical for this time of the night. But into the Brisbane and the Gold Coast area in time for those fireworks and those New Year's Eve celebrations, it looks like it is going to be once again pretty pleasant. 22 degrees, winds light to moderate out of the east, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any rainfall kind of lingering around the Brisbane area. And again, on the convective forecast models, which are very accurate, it doesn't look like there's going to be anything there. So very pleasant stuff for Brisbane by the looks of things. A nice cool breeze keeping that humidity at bay. Very pleasant viewing experiences for for those fireworks, depending on whereabouts they are. Into New South Wales, we do have to give a detailed forecast there for severe thunderstorms that are expected this afternoon and evening. We're going to see thunderstorms, like I said, fire up pretty much right out of the gate into the northeastern parts of the state, especially around the Tamworth area. Pretty much, if you draw a circle for about a 200 or 250 kilometre radius outside of Tamworth, you're expecting kind of a big pool of severe thunderstorms to develop here, with a chance of thunderstorms developing further south down to Bathurst and extending right down to about Captain's Flat outside of Canberra. By the looks of things, we'll see the chance of thunderstorms there. These thunderstorms could be severe around the Tamworth area with heavy rainfall, large hailstones, and damaging and locally destructive winds as well. And if you were to take a look at the convective forecast models, we are going to be seeing some pretty significant storms fire up here and there. You can see plenty of thunderstorms carrying that heavy rainfall. These storms will likely upscale pretty quickly into kind of just big rain messes with moderate to heavy falls, especially as you get further north into the afternoon and evening. And these thunderstorms will actually die off pretty quickly as well. In terms of New South Wales, those thunderstorms should be done and dusted by about 6 or 7 o'clock, or at least very much on their last legs. There will be a couple of developing cells around the Barrington Tops as usual for that time of the night, but these thunderstorms will be pretty quick on the way out, developing very early on into the afternoon compared to normal, and then dying off pretty quickly as well into the evening. So again, that's good news, especially for New Year's Eve celebrations. It'll be an afternoon of thunderstorms for you to get ready, and then as the evening rolls around, those thunderstorms will, for the most part, clear out. Further north into the northern parts of the state around Glen Innes up to about Tenterfield, Stanthorpe in Queensland, and Goondiwindi also in Queensland, there are going to be those thunderstorms lingering later on into the afternoon and evening. And like I said, these thunderstorms are expected to be pretty severe with heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and large hailstones. Some really good thunderstorms are expected later on in the afternoon and evening into the extreme northern parts of New South Wales, like I said, around Goondiwindi and Wollongara. And if you were to compare that to the other forecast models, the convective forecast models for the Brisbane area, you can see some good thunderstorms also expected there. So in this area here, along the border, some good thunderstorms expected. Also some really good thunderstorms possible around the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast. It wouldn't get my hopes up too high for the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast, just considering the storms that happened last night. And then some also good storms expected earlier on into the night around the Tamworth area, Tamworth and Armidale. Some good storms there, extending pretty much in a line tracing from Wollongara down to Armidale and then across to Tamworth and about across inland to Coolah. This is kind of the curve of where the severe thunderstorms are expected to be, and locations around Narrabri, Moree and Inverell unlikely to see too much in the way of severe thunderstorm activity, but they will certainly have it in their vicinity, that's for sure. That's a pretty kind of run-down version of the thunderstorm forecast. I could go into hours and hours of detail on these storms here, but let's take a look at what's driving these thunderstorms, especially into the northern parts of New South Wales. So there are going to be very good instability values in the atmosphere, convective available potential energy values at around sort of that 2,000 joules per kilogram of available air. 2,000 is actually a pretty good benchmark for New South Wales for a severe thunderstorm outbreak. That 2,000 is a really high number for New South Wales, considering their more southerly location. So some really good storms are expected around the Coolah area and up towards Tamworth, and then some good storms again later on into the evening around the northern parts of New South Wales. Certainly some really high instability values in the atmosphere, so some good thunderstorms really look like they're going to come in and make the most of this weather. Basically, the conditions look set for a really nice severe thunderstorm outbreak tonight into the northern parts of New South Wales, and same deal for Queensland as well. Good convective available potential energy values there. Not as flash as what they are in New South Wales, comparatively speaking at least. There are some high values around Longreach, but that's kind of it. And as such, those thunderstorms across Queensland, they're going to have a harder time going severe warned. There'll be plenty of instability in the atmosphere, especially into the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast, where they're expected to fire up into the evening, into the early afternoon hours and die off by the evening rather, but the values aren't exactly sky high, that's for sure. Anyways, that is enough for New South Wales and Queensland for the remainder of 2024, but looking out into the future, you can see thunderstorms still expected to be persistent on the forecast. You can see tomorrow we are expecting a very nice outbreak of severe thunderstorms as well across interior parts of Queensland into the south and the central parts of Queensland. This thunderstorm outbreak is including pretty much everywhere apart from the immediate southeastern corner of Queensland around the Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And then for locations further inland, especially between a line or a bit of a curve between Kingaroy, Chinchilla and up towards Edgerswold, and then extending north, kind of tracing the coastline up to Billawheeler through Dingo and then Moranbah and Glendon. Some really good thunderstorms expected to fire up along the coastal fringes into the early evening hours, and then some good thunderstorms also expected inland between Longreach and Augathella as well, just between this line here. So great thunderstorms also on the forecast tomorrow afternoon. This is certainly a forecast that I want to take a great look at in detail, and it looks like it's actually a pretty similar setup tomorrow, all things considered. It's going to pan out pretty similar to how the thunderstorms played out last night across the southeast of Queensland, the only difference being that this is going to happen happen more in a more central location of Queensland. The immediate southeastern corner and the Sunshine Coast is less likely to be significantly impacted by thunderstorms. Still, though, a couple of showers expected down there. Rainfall accumulations will be quite high, especially over the next 3 days. You can take a look at 3-day rainfall accumulations into the first couple of days of 2025. Really good accumulations are expected between sort of that 40 to 60 millimetres. Some locations along the coastline up to about 75 millimetres for Bundaberg. The majority of that rainfall coming through from thunderstorms tomorrow and also into Thursday. And then accumulations between 15 and 45 millimetres into interior parts of Queensland as well. Jericho and Tambo expecting about 30 millimetres. Emerald and Clermont expecting about 40 millimetres. And same deal with Moranbah and Glendon. Dingo about 40 millimetres. Rolleston about 30 millimetres. And Billawheeler, Taroom, Edgewold, Chinchilla. The locations that are expected to get 3 rounds of thunderstorms over the coming couple of days, and the chance of some severe thunderstorms tonight as well. The accumulations there will be up into around the 60 or the 70 millimetre mark. I like to think of these rainfall accumulations as kind of on the lower side of what's expected. Certainly if you miss out on thunderstorms, then the rainfall is going to be close to zero, but for the most part, especially into the locations that are very much well embedded in the rainfall, such as Emerald or Billawheeler or Bundaberg, the thunderstorms there should certainly come into fruition and dump some pretty good rainfall accumulations, and probably quite a bit more for some of these locations than what the forecast is actually suggesting. A 3-day thunderstorm outbreak can drop 200 millimetres of rainfall in the southeast of Queensland at this time of the year, and that is a completely normal thunderstorm outbreak as well. Looking further ahead into the forecast on Thursday, it looks like the forecast models are having a bit of a hard time here with the forecast. You seem to be missing a lot of data here, but a very meaty severe thunderstorm outbreak expected extending up between Harvey Bay and Rockhampton along the coastline. It looks like a coastal low pressure system is going to drive plenty of moisture and instability ashore, and as such a good thunderstorm outbreak expected Thursday afternoon. Good rainfall as well expected into the southeast of Queensland. Thursdays are definitely a forecast I want to take a look at when the convective models aren't broken, or the forecast models rather aren't broken. But by the looks of things, the Axis G3 also suggesting some decent rainfall and some thunderstorms here and there. Good thunderstorms as well into the southern parts of the state. We will revisit this forecast in tomorrow morning's forecast update, just considering a bit of the uncertain nature regarding the forecast models having a bit of a breakdown this morning as we wrap up 2024. Rainfall again continuing through Thursday and then into Friday, and then we've got that coastal showers expected to fire up across the Queensland coastline from Friday onwards. The rainfall forecast, I knew that it was flip-flopping and it was also downtrending, but it's been completely backed off, and at this time I don't think we're going to see much rainfall along the central Queensland coastline, and I do apologise for the confusion in the forecast. The forecast models have been really bouncy on that, and I've had nothing else to go on, so as such I always predicted that rainfall there, and we're now going to have to back off on that rainfall forecast, unfortunately, but still some good accumulations expected from locations between Bundaberg right up to Townsville. At least 50 millimetres is coming through in the next week for pretty much everyone along the coastline, bar a few people south of Mackay down to Ogmore, but still some really good falls expected here and there, and from showers as well, especially between Proserpine and up to Townsville. Depending on how these showers come through on the weekend, we could be seeing up to about 120 millimetres along the coastline. One location that's not going to miss out on the rainfall is going to be the Cassowary Coast up in far northern Queensland. You can see showers expected to pipe up there on the weekend, not getting heavy until about Monday or Tuesday, and those showers there will then begin to drop some really significant rainfall accumulations out to about Wednesday or Thursday. Those rainfall accumulations will amount into those triple figures, and you can see rainfall accumulations for the first week of 2025 expected to be, like I said, well into those triple figures across much of far north Queensland and the Cassowary Coast, up to about 150 millimetres offshore, and then inland out towards Innisfail and Tully, about 130 millimetres a pop there. I reckon this is a bit of a low end on the rainfall forecast, at least for interior parts of the Cassowary Coast around Innisfail and Tully. I reckon the rainfall accumulations could be up to about 200 millimetres for the first week of 2025, but I also think that in some locations this rainfall forecast is also quite bullish. I don't really see Ingham and Cardwell picking up more than 100 millimetres of rainfall, and I also don't see Cairns picking up more than about 30 or 40 millimetres of rainfall as well. The Daintree Rainforest will pick up about 120 millimetres of rainfall, and then inland out towards Atherton, Ravenshaw and Mareeba about 100 millimetres of rainfall as well on the forecast there, which I do believe to be a little bit bullish, but I reckon the remainder of the forecast looking pretty good, at least on a numbers standpoint. I think the numbers are actually going to be ending up pretty accurate for the first week of 2025. Good rainfall around Bundaberg and Agnes Water, as we talked about earlier on in the video, most of that coming through from thunderstorms on Wednesday and Thursday, but then some showers lingering on Friday, Saturday and Sunday will bring that further rainfall to really bump up their accumulations there, and then good rainfall accumulations expected around the Mackay and Proserpine area up to about 50 millimetres there, which could blow out dramatically into higher accumulations depending on what showers come through and what direction the winds are blowing. Right now it looks like they're going to be blowing out of the east, and as such rainfall accumulations aren't going to be as high. Gargett and Yalborough could get some good rainfall inland from Mackay into the mountains, but again probably not up towards triple figures there. If the wind was to swing around to the southeast and we saw the showers being pumped ashore up towards Proserpine and some of the Whitsundays up here, we'd be seeing much higher rainfall accumulations, but at this time that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And unfortunately for the most part the rainfall has been bumped off off pretty much completely for the south central and then into the far northern Queensland forecast as well. I know a lot of people got pretty excited for the rainfall. There is still some coming for Gladstone, Bundaberg and Rockhampton, also some rainfall coming up for the Cassowary Coast, but for those locations across central Queensland, unfortunately the rainfall has not come into fruition in this forecast. In terms of the 14-day forecast, you can also see not too much on the way as well to round out the first 2 weeks of 2025. It looks like that drier period that we thought was going to come in around January is going to start to build from around mid-January, so what the rainfall does there, it looks like it is going to be on the lower side of normal. Again, something we'll revisit in later forecast updates, but this time I wouldn't be getting your hopes up for some really significant rainfall throughout the month of January. It doesn't look overly likely at this time. Let's just take a brief forecast across interior Australia, because there is some rainfall coming through much later on into the forecast period, and in fact, by extension, rainfall is also expected to pipe up across the eastern states as well, come around Monday or Tuesday from a weak low pressure system that's going to move through the interior parts of the nation. But it looks like throughout the interior parts of the nation, coinciding with the MJO, the Mount-Julian Oscillation, some significant falls are expected across interior parts of Western Australia, the Northern Territory and South Australia from a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak sometime into the end of the second week of 2025. So certainly something that we'll keep an eye on the forecast. They've had plenty of rainfall so far this wet season across interior parts of Western Australia, so any more rainfall probably not going to be that welcome either. But unfortunately for rain lovers, or for cooler weather lovers rather, those temperatures should keep things pretty dry. They're also going to keep things scorching hot as well. To round out 2024, we're going to have a hot one in Perth, a top of 37 degrees expected. It looks like it could get a little bit hotter as well across the hills. You can see it's going to be a pretty early maximum as well. Temperatures 36 degrees at midday and then 37 degrees at 1 o'clock for the maximum, and you can see on the convective forecast model here with a really high resolution forecast, temperatures up to about 40 or 41 expected into some of the hills around Armidale and Midland, some really warm temperatures expected there, and warm temperatures as well extending up through the northern parts of the wheat belt. We could be seeing a couple of thunderstorms later on this afternoon and evening inland from Geraldton and Kalbarri and Northampton into the Murchison area. Those thunderstorms should be pretty weak, nothing too crazy. A couple of severe ones are possible in terms of the damaging wind threat, but for heavy rainfall and whatnot, it doesn't look like those thunderstorms are going to pack too much in the way of a punch. And then to welcome in 2025, it's going to be a warm one, another 40-degree day expected for Perth. I don't know why people get so kind of, oh wow, a 40 degree is coming in for the southwest of Western Australia. It is normal at this time of the year to get a 40-degree day, and we get about 8 of them a year in Perth, so it's not exactly insane. It is still really, really warm, and I do feel for people that struggle with the heat, myself included. 40 degrees is certainly really warm for Perth, and it does feel the part of 40 degrees as well, but I reckon we should make 42 kind of the new normal for really warm temperatures, because 42 only happens once or twice a year, and that is what I would consider very hot indeed. 42 can often be the hottest day of the year. I think 40 degrees, it's still kind of that bearable when you walk outside. You're not walking into an industrial furnace. That extra 2 degrees really does make all the difference, and speaking from experience and how bad my sunburn is, between 40 and 42 degrees is not often a competition between what's the more powerful, even though it is just a 2-degree temperature difference. Those temperatures will cool off on Thursday, at least for the Perth metro area, but they will increase to the southwestern coastal regions between Albany across towards Esperance, with those winds being driving that really warm temperatures right down to the coastline. By the looks of things, maximum around 42 degrees expected outside of Hopetown and Bremer Bay, Ravensthorpe a top of 40, and then inland into parts of the wheat belt 41 or 42, very warm out there. Not super hot again, but still very warm indeed, and those temperatures will build further north. You can see daytime maxima from about I believe it's mid next week onwards. We're going to be seeing those temperatures build up once again up into the mid to high 40s across the interior parts of Western Australia, and then into interior parts of the Northern Territory and South Australia as well. Looks like temperatures that they're going to exceed about 44, 45 degrees for the most part, which is very warm indeed across interior parts of South Australia and Northern Territory. They're built for it at the end of the day, but 46 or 47, that's still feeling really warm, and you can see much later on into the forecast period, we're now talking about temperatures up to a 47, up to about 48, and then Sunday the 12th of January, 48, up towards about 49. Will we crack 50 degrees? No, the heat dies off by next Monday by the looks of things, and then heads further in towards New South Wales. So it looks like in Central Australia towards an Eastern Australia heatwave is expected sometime into the second week of 2025. This is more of a heads up on the forecast as opposed to what's exactly going to happen. A lot of details still need to be ironed out for that to actually come into fruition. We will keep a close eye on that as well, and I'll revisit that in a future forecast update. Let's turn things into a tropical low forecast now over offshore from Western Australia. We have tropical low 08U, which, I mean, it's doing better than expected. Look at the convection that is blowing up in the side of really strong wind shear as well. If we can get a bit of a forecast, or not a forecast loop, a bit of a loop going for the kind of satellite animation here, I'd be really keen to see if this system is beginning to rotate. I actually haven't looked at the satellite for this system in the research of making this video. All I know that it's blown up some substantial convection, and it's actually doing not a half bad job of getting up towards tropical cyclone status. Now, obviously, it doesn't have gale force winds yet, but I think the forecast models are dramatically underestimating this system. The Bureau of Meteorology has always had this system in its heart as well. I think they're giving it a 25% chance of tropical cyclone development, but it's only got about 24 hours to do it until that wind shear actually becomes way too high for this system. You can see the convective tops are so high, it's actually distorting the satellite imagery right now. So this system really is packing a punch in terms of thunderstorm activity, and over the top of Christmas Island, you can see the canopy of this thunderstorm really blowing up over there. The system is trying to wrap up a low-level center right now. It's struggling to do so, and that's the thing standing in the way of this becoming a full-blown tropical cyclone. There's no wind observations in the region. Obviously, you can see Christmas Island winds of around 10 knots. If this was close to becoming a tropical cyclone, I would say that this would, the Christmas Island, the weather station there, would be needing to have winds of around 25 knots to prove to me that this has proper gale force winds. So I don't think this is anywhere close to becoming a tropical cyclone at this time, but the forecast models, they are favoring a little bit more development, especially throughout the remainder of today and into very early tomorrow. It looks like this storm will have a hot shot of development before wind shear kind of gets to it and rips it apart later on tomorrow afternoon. Again, it might have another resurgence later on this week and into this weekend, but it doesn't look like that's too likely as well. That might just be the forecast models slowly wrapping itself up again. But it is still going to be that West Australian threat, like I said, warming those temperatures up across Western Australia. Those winds as well across Christmas Island and the Cocos Keeling Islands will certainly be elevated. And it's been enhanced rainfall there as well, but considering the island location, especially for Christmas Island and the Cocos Keeling Islands, the major risk from rainfall there is going to be oversized puddles. Anyways, that is it for 2024. That is it for today. Thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you so much for sticking through with this channel for 11.5 months for 2024. It's been an incredible year for the channel as well. We've grown from nothing to 22,800 followers, and I could not do it without the help of any of you. So I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for 2024. It's been a bumper year for not only me, but this channel as well, and pretty much anything I've been involved in. The support has been much appreciated. I mean, the approval rating on the channel is 99.6%. That goes to say that these forecasts do mean something to a lot of people, and I enjoy every single day going through the comment section and reading dozens upon dozens of beautiful comments as well, and thank you so much for all of the support. It really is heartwarming to see. 2025 is going to be a big year for the network. I've got some really big plans, so I'm going to keep under taps for the most part, just considering the fact that they might not go through right now, but we do have really big aspirations for the CyclonesOZ channel as well. Be loving to hit 50,000 followers, really turning this into Australia's own weather network. I know these forecasts are not professional quality or professionally produced, but the information here is top notch. Very proud of it, and this is a culmination of 7 years of looking at the forecast model. So I like to think that I know what I'm talking about in terms of trends and forecasts. I really have been working in and around windy for quite a while now. Anyways, that is all from me today and all from me this year. Thank you so much to the channel sponsors as well. I could not run this show without them, and their support has been unwavering throughout the course of 2024 and much appreciated as well. But that is all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.